welcome to Working Families webinar. This is on supporting carers. And the webinar is part of our events programme to mark National Work-Life Week, which we've run for over a decade. We started it and we continue it as a way to shine a spotlight on what employers can do to help parents and carers get a healthy balance between their work life and home life. Each year, we see organisations from all sectors and sizes take the opportunity to focus on the well-being of their teams and celebrate good ideas and innovations. So I hope you're taking part too. We'd love to hear what you're doing to mark it. So please do share using the hashtag #WorkLifeWeek. We've got three great speakers who are going to share their experiences and learnings with us, but I wanted to kick off with a few reflections from us at Working Families about why it's important to put support in place for carers and our sense of what they are looking for after this incredibly tough 18 months so many of us have been through. And just a note to say that, of course, it has been much tougher for some people than for others. I think it's really important that we remember that. Well, maybe it's just important that I remember that. We've just run some polling to mark National Work-Life Week and find out how parents and carers are feeling about the balance between their work and their home lives and their well-being, of course, as we come out of the toughest working period many of us have ever been through. What struck me from our polling was that carers really are at the sharp end of all of this business that we've been through. 50% of carers told us that their caring responsibilities are holding them back from promotion at work. Over a third of parents and carers told us that those people who work the longest hours in their organisation are the most respected by senior leaders, putting those with caring responsibilities at a distinct disadvantage. It's not all bad news, which is always lovely to say. The pandemic has brought some benefits in the workplace, and it's carers that are reported the most dramatic shift. 61%, that's well over half of carers, told us that open conversations about mental health and well-being are more accepted at work now than they were before the pandemic. And that's significantly more than for parents, 50% of whom said the same. So that's a really stark difference and one we really welcome. So, what can organisations do to support carers in their staff teams more effectively? We know there's some great work already going on. Every year we run a benchmark with our Working Families employer members to find out what best practice is across different sectors so that they can improve. This year, 93% of our employer members said they offer proactive support to carers. Over half offer coaching programmes and a mentor or buddy scheme, and 67% offer workshops, webinars, or e-learning for carers. 68% of them run a carers network internally to provide support to those individuals. And 52% of employers we work with offer specific carers leave, the majority offering 5 days paid leave for carers. So there is some brilliant, really encouraging work going on. And as I mentioned earlier, we have three speakers here today with us that I'm so pleased to say have agreed to share their experiences and give us some inspiration on how we can all look again at support for carers this National Work-Life Week. And they all are, in no particular order. We've got Joanna Hall, who's the co-chair of the Working Carers Network at Nationwide. And they are previous winners of our Best for Carers Award. Patrick McCarthy, who's chair of the Carers Network and also director, Tooling and Architecture Services, and chief technology officer at Centrica. And they are also, Centrica is also a previous winner of the Best for Carers Award. And finally, we have Linda Doyley, Senior Manager, Diversity and Inclusion, and Chair of the Carers Network at the Crown Prosecution Service, who was sponsor of this year's Best for Carers Award. So thank you all so much for joining us. And just so everybody knows, we've asked them to share with us their thoughts in turn as we kick off. And as we go, please remember to pop any questions you'd like answered in the panel in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can, and also share your thoughts on Twitter using the hashtag #WorkLifeWeek. So if I can go to you first, Joanna, and if you could share what support looks like at Nationwide and how you support carers, particularly in the virtual environment, and any plans for the future. Over to you, Joanna.
Thank you very much. So, as Jane said, I'm the co-chair of the Working Carer Network at Nationwide. And I thought long and hard about what does support actually look like within Nationwide for working carers, and came up with all sorts of different thoughts, really, that actually we don't have a one-size-fits-all, which is probably a good thing. We're accessed via many different things. So we've moved away, and it's kind of touching on one of the other questions, from being in a physical place where we can get together and sort of draw attention to our network. So we've had to work quite creatively and use our internal intranets, our Yammer Talk, team sites, etc., which I will touch on in a little bit more detail. So within Nationwide, really, I think, as you touched on as well, we've been very proactive, especially through the pandemic, and it's really made us think about how we do things and how we approach things. And one of the things was, how do we actually identify people? Because previously we would literally stand in an atrium, visit a branch, visit a contact centre, and do a presentation to tell people about caring and responsibilities. And I'm sure you'll all resonate with this. It's amazing the number of people that don't actually realise they're carers. The penny suddenly drops and they're like, oh, actually that applies to me. So we find it a really good way to drum up our membership as such. And being in a virtual world, that's made that an awful lot more difficult. So I think probably one of our best examples was during Carers Week, and we came up with a full-on campaign. We thought, well, we're going to take advantage of this and we're really going to go for it. And we worked with a couple of our other networks, actually, because we had a belief, but we weren't entirely sure. It's one of those things we think, but we don't know, that we had a real population of carers that were caring for a cultural or religious reason. And within Nationwide, we've got a really diverse population of employees. And we thought it was very important to try and reach out and attract that group. So we worked with our Faith and Belief and our Race Together network, and came up with a term, because we didn't really know what to call these people, not that they need a label, but how do we attract them? So we came up with a Hidden Hero campaign, and I have to say it has been hugely successful. So across Carers Week, we had intranet news stories with our new superhero logo of hidden heroes. We talked about what we thought a hidden hero was, and it was come from all walks of life and anybody really. We made it really clear that we didn't need to put a label against you. You didn't necessarily need to sign up as on the Carers Network. We'd like you to, but you didn't need to. We were just trying to raise awareness of the policies and procedures that are really there, and the support that we can give to everybody. We're very fortunate we've got a nationwide radio. I don't know if the branch staff think that that's fortunate, but we were able to use the radio within branches as well. So we were starting to impact our customers. They were asking questions about, well, that's Working Carers Network. And we arranged for different speakers to come in each day, and we covered a real broad range of topics. So we had a something just for the men, because we really have identified that gentlemen carers often find it more difficult to come forward, and our gentlemen have told us that they don't like to kind of stick their hand up and say, oh, it's me. We did one that was very popular, caring versus self-care, and that went down really well. We worked with Macmillan on cancer awareness, and we worked with dementia care accounts as well for dementia care. So it's been really across the board a really successful event. But probably the nitty-gritty thing of how do we actually attract people is, we find now that when they join us, we actually talk to them during their inductions with us. So it's not exclusively the caring network. We've got 8 employee networks. It's just about to become 9. So we talk about the employee networks. We give them links, access, and we actively ask people to sort of identify then if they feel comfortable to do so. If they have a disability, if they belong to any of the other networks, veterans, etc., or if they have caring responsibilities. And it's done in a proper arms wrapped around you. Please don't be embarrassed. We welcome you. We love the diversity that you bring to our society. So that's been quite successful. The support in a virtual environment has been tricky, and we were doing physical drop-ins in branches and in our admin centres, time for me, time for tea sessions where we got together. One of the wins that we didn't anticipate with this is that we took that online, and where we went from a geographical location where only a small group of people ever met, suddenly our time for me, time for tea sessions were UK, across the whole of the UK. That has been something that we didn't anticipate being a real win, but that, again, diversity of people meeting and different situations, etc., and then the peer networks that are built up through that has been a real win for us. We're very, very pleased with that, and it wasn't something we anticipated. On the back of the gentleman's session that we did, something for the men, we're setting up, and we don't quite know what to call it. At the moment, it's unofficially called Need an Ear Time for a Beer. But again, we appreciate that we shouldn't probably be involving alcohol into our caring sessions. But again, we've just run our first one as a drop-in, and the gents, we had a really good turnout for that. And it can be ladies as well, by the way. It isn't exclusively gents, but it just feels like a safe space that our gentlemen can come along and have a chat. And probably the other real win that, again, we didn't anticipate it, we reacted to the pandemic. We set up an internal closed team site for our members. It's voluntary, they don't have to join, they'll opt in or out of this. But what we didn't anticipate from this was the peer-to-peer support that's come through, and the visibility that we've got of themes. So through this, we have found that dementia has been a real issue with a number of our people, which we weren't aware of before. But because of the chats and people joining in and talking about mums, dads, relatives, etc., it's become really evident. And then the other subject that started to creep in that we're just working on now is anticipatory grief. And again, it's not a topic that's ever raised its head with us before, but that's been a real win that we've got these topics now that we kind of weren't aware of because we were only meeting in smaller groups. But now we've got this big network, literally talking to each other. These themes are coming out. So we're really pleased with that, and obviously we'll continue to work on that. That's an ongoing for the future plans. The things that we've got in place that have worked well, we've got a carer's passport. That's been invaluable during the pandemic, especially because it's been a structured conversation that really brings out where people are struggling, where they've had care, respite care coming in, and that dropped off, etc. It was just a structured way of having those conversations, which went well. The year before, we introduced paid carers leave. So again, that's been invaluable. And the thing that's been really great about that is we can actually book that in 30-minute chunks. So as before, any family dependent leave was you had to book a day or half a day. We can now take time for appointments, which again, our carers are feeding back that that's a really valuable way of being able to use it. We've had fantastic engagement from our CEO and our board. So we've been invited to talk to them. We've got the buy-in of them, and we've actually reached out and done some really cheeky asks of our senior team, which is great because we've now got our senior team talking about caring. And the upshot of that was every communication that went out throughout the pandemic, whereas previously we talked about parents all the time, without exception, anything that impacted a consideration for what people might be doing at home, the carers network and carers were mentioned. And that's the first time that's happened in Nationwide, which again, we were really, really pleased about. And then finally, our time for tea sessions, we've moved the hours because we suddenly realised our retail colleagues, we have them across lunchtimes, their busiest time, and that was kind of one of those, why on earth have we done that moments? So we do early sessions, we do evening sessions. We just spread our time for me sessions out through the day just to give everyone an opportunity to arrive, to attend. So just to finish off then, our future plans, we are absolutely passionate about building our relationship with our retail colleagues, without a doubt. It is more difficult for our our member-facing colleagues to access some of the policies, etc. So we're working with them. The top tip would be the team site. We've really relished that. That's given us such a wealth of information that we didn't anticipate. And then on the back of the theme that have come out around dementia, we're actually now looking, how do we take that into our member network? Because obviously if it's impacting such a large population of our caring network, is there something that we can do that will actually impact our members as we go forward? So that's kind of our focuses as over the next few months, so straight the year.
Joanna, thank you. There are so many things you said that I want to pick up on, but I'm gonna be very good and leave that to the end. Can I just double check with you though? Was the phrase you used anticipatory grief?
Yes, anticipatory grief. So it's people anticipating the loss of somebody, and through COVID and through cancer and dementia, that's become a real thing that we weren't aware of that until quite recently.
That's absolutely fascinating. Hopefully we'll have a question or two on that and we can pick up on that later. Thank you so much, Joanna.
Thank you.
And Patrick, if I could come to you next.
Sure.
How's it going at Centrica?
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be able to share some of the journey that we've been on at Centrica to support our caring community. I'm Patrick McCarthy, and I've worked for Centrica for just over 16 years. My day job is in the IT department, but I've also been the co-chair of the Centrica Carers Network for just over a year. I'm a carer myself. I have a severely disabled daughter who's now 14, and I joined the network about 12 years ago just as a member, and then I volunteered to be my local office rep about 10 years ago. But as a network, and like so many other people, we've had a really challenging time during the pandemic. Our co-chair, John Collier, and one of our network committee members, Kevin Pilgrim, both died of COVID in the last 12 months, having contracted it while caring for their loved ones. So in these circumstances, it's a pretty bittersweet to take on the co-chair role. But as a network, as a staff network, we're determined to continue the good work that both Kevin and John have done over a number of years. So I sort of feel honoured to follow in their footsteps. And being a carer myself and working with my network of reps who are all carers, I guess we feel our strength is in that we're able to listen to the challenges of the carers in our community and to really relate to and understand what they're going through. We've been able to offer really practical advice, as well as putting them in touch with people that have been through or are going through similar experiences. We're pretty proud of our carers policy that we now have in place, but it didn't magically happen overnight. We've had to work hard with our senior leaders in Centrica over a number of years to create and to refine the policy. Similar to Nationwide, our carers are able to sign up to a carers passport as a self-service task in our HR system. That really allows them to document as much or as little of their caring responsibilities as they feel they want to. And by doing that, it kicks off a conversation with their line manager. Building that relationship with their line manager, I think, is crucial to provide the right support for the carer. And the passport stays with them if they need to change line manager. And that enables them to feel like they don't have to start from scratch with the explanation of their caring responsibilities if that happens to them. At Centrica, our carer policy allows carers to take 10 days of paid leave in a rolling 12-month period. And if our carers use that 10 days up, they get to take another 10 days of paid carers leave if they can then match it with their annual leave. And it doesn't have to be booked in blocks, but it can be booked as and when required for individual appointments, as well as bigger chunks when people are caring for somebody maybe after an operation. A carer in our system should sign up for their carers leave through our normal leave management processes. In that way, we're able to track the amount of carers leave that's being taken. And it's interesting to see that on average, our carers take approximately 3.5 days of carers leave a year. That's probably less than we initially anticipated, and it might be a sign that the carers still aren't utilising as much carers leave as they really need. With approximately 1,500 carers passports within Centrica, we know that we still have a lot of hidden carers in the organisation, and people feel for whatever reason they don't really want to identify as a carer at work. This still might be because they feel that they'll be seen as less reliable, or it might have some other impact on their work. And as we've already heard, some people still don't even identify themselves as a carer. So to address this year, we've been really trying hard to normalise caring and to do our best to demonstrate to everyone that it's okay to be a carer and to also be great at doing your job. By doing this, we've been able to start uncovering some of our hidden carers to ensure that they get the support they deserve. We've also spent time introducing a buddy system with our senior managers, linking up our carers committee members in our different regions to senior managers in that area. This has helped us to really role model visible support of our carers community and also to enhance the understanding of our carers policy in those areas. We've also targeted events like Carers Week to reinforce this by using our network sponsor, Matthew Bateman, who's the Managing Director of British Gas. And as one of our most senior leaders within the organisation, it's great to show that he is supportive of our carer community. Effective line management is absolutely crucial in making support of our carers work within Centrica. As well as the policy, we have training modules that all managers are asked to complete. we need to get to a point where every carer that speaks to their line manager gets a consistent experience. Communicating with our carers, because they're such a large, diverse and geographically spread group, is an ongoing challenge for us. We have a large contingent of call centre workers and also engineers that spend most of their time in their vans. So it's quite a challenge to get to speak to all of these guys. So we make extensive use of Microsoft Teams across Centrica. We already had it in place before the pandemic, but it's really come into its own in the last 18 months or so. We've used it to both coordinate our network activities, including collaborating with external partners like Carers UK, but we also use it to communicate with our network members themselves. Being able to see and hear colleagues during our remote working has been really beneficial for staying in touch with everyone. And we're also using a tool called Yammer, which is a Facebook-style tool for more informal networking. We regularly use real-life carer stories that we publish on our intranet and make available to people. It's really beneficial to be able to show what it's like to be a carer and how the carers policy and our carers network really help our carers to balance their work and life. While we're proud of what we've done at Centrica, we still think there's more to do. Having a great policy is only the first step, because it's only as good as the people that deliver it each day. I think we continue to work hard to ensure that our carers get consistent treatment wherever they sit in our business. And we continue a push to upskill our managers in the existence of the policy and how to apply it. And we try and share common scenarios with them, the sort of scenarios that they're most likely to come across. But we also put a route in so that they can contact our carers network reps if they have more complex cases. And we try and keep the resolution of any issues at a local level as much as possible before managers need to raise any cases with our HR teams. We also have a number of other networks across Centrica, and we see great advantage in working closely with the other networks. There is a significant overlap across all of our networks, and we need to work a bit harder, I think, to exploit those for positive outcomes for our carers. This should allow us to reach more carers and to also support our carers by signposting them to other networks that might be able to help them. I think I was going to wrap up there, but I feel really lucky working at Centrica that I've had a really, truly supportive carer journey, and I'm passionate to make that journey as supportive for all of the carers that we have across Centrica.
Patrick, thank you so very much. And just to say that, you know, it must have been really difficult to have lost those colleagues, particularly in those circumstances. So thank you very much for representing them. I'm really interested to see that there are 3 themes that I'm picking up so far. What we call real models, line managers, and senior team involvement and support. I'm going to be fascinated, thank you, Patrick, to see whether or not that comes through in Linda's tales. So Linda, if I could pass over to you. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Oh, thank you, Jane. So hi everyone, my name is Linda Doyley and I'm the Senior Manager, HR Manager in the Diversity and Inclusion team in the Crown Prosecution Service. I'm also a carer myself and I founded the CPS Carers Network. But I'm going to be speaking to you today with my D&I HR hat on rather than my carers network hat on, but I am going to steal Joanna's idea of her hidden heroes, so because that that just sounds so excellent. So I'm sorry, Joanna, but I'm definitely stealing that idea from you, so thank you for that. But I'm really pleased to be here to speak to you today. And you know, we've done a lot of research in the CPS. We've done some forums, and we've done some focus groups and stuff like that to really find out what it is that our carers need, and those people who, as the previous speakers have said, for whatever reason don't want to come forward. And you know, for me as a carer, I think I'm always very, very conscious of the fact that not being able to talk about caring leaves, I think it's 1 in 3 carers socially isolated. So even if you're working full or part-time, being a carer can be a really isolating experience. So how do we in CPS identify the people that need support and encourage them to come forward? So we've found that many of our colleagues aren't open about being a carer, as they're concerned that it's going to affect their employment relationship or their status. So for us, our advice to our line managers is that it's really important to be aware and sort of in tune with your staff and their individual circumstances, and to be sort of as approachable as possible, because if you're supporting and understanding your employee, they can get the support that they need, which will enable them to better balance the demands of their work with the demands on them as carers. And we know for some, taking on a carer's role can be an unexpected, life-changing circumstances. So that early morning phone call that changes your life in an instant. And for some people, being a carer is a very, very gradual process. And carers, you know, very often, as the previous speakers have mentioned, they see their support as just being a good friend, a son or a wife. So, you know, we've heard people say to us, you know, well, I do my mum's shopping and helping around the house, that doesn't make me a carer. But, you know, of course, that does exactly make you a carer. And we also know that many of our carers are juggling their roles, obviously, you know, working, and they've got childcare as well. So, you know, the sort of sandwich carers where they're doing, you know, looking after mum or dad or both, but looking after children at the same time as well. So there's lots of things that they're juggling as well as being at work. And also our research, you know, much like has been said before, and that's the problem going last, because I now feel I'm repeating what the others have said, so apologies for that. But our research has also suggested that many of our Black and minority ethnic carers in the CPS are even less likely to self-identify as carers. And I think it's really interesting to note that some of the feedback we've had, that in some languages such as Punjabi, there are no words that translate as carer. So that kind of suggests to us that in some ethnic groups, that role isn't even recognised. So that has been one of our sort of things that we're going to be looking at going forward. How do we reach those people to get them to recognise that what they do themselves does make them a carer. So in the workplace, signs that we can encourage our line managers to look out for would be a change in behaviour or mood, physical well-being, just something not quite right and out of the norm. Perhaps they're frequently asking for changes in their hours, or perhaps their level of attendance has started to become a concern, using lots of leave for half days and things like that. You know, you would hope if you know somebody in your team, you kind of know when something's just not quite right. And sometimes it's up to you as a line manager to have that first conversation rather than waiting for someone to come and raise it with yourself. So, you know, we know that being a carer, you know, they don't have any legal obligation to come and notify their employee that they're a carer. But, you know, we want a healthy work environment, which should enable all of our employees to feel that they're able to come forward and talk to their line manager. And of course, you know, having that suitable time and place to talk with your employee, where you've set aside a little bit of time just to get, you know, to have those conversations and encourage somebody to start speaking. So, you know, you might want to say to your staff member that you've noticed a change, you know, what your observations have been, and, you know, do they want to have a bit of a chat about what might be causing it? Make sure that you've got information about the support that can be provided to them, what is available for them. So that might be a combination of your policy for parents as well as your policy for carers. And you might be able to take things from each of those policies and combine those. And encourage your staff member to work with you and discuss what adjustments they need in the workplace to support their particular circumstances, because everybody is going to be different. And everyone's, you know, needs will differ slightly, and perhaps even differ at different periods of time. So one week you might have lots and lots of appointments that you need to go to, and then you might not have any for 2 or 3 weeks. And, you know, we've got a carer's passport, which we would encourage everybody who is a carer to complete. And the good thing about a carer's passport is that if you change line manager, that passport comes with you and your caring responsibilities are already set up, so you don't need to worry about having to go through it all again and having those conversations. And, you know, with my HR hat on, it's important for us all to remember that protection from discrimination under the Equality Act 2010, examples might be not offering somebody a job or treating them less favourably because of their caring responsibilities. So, you know, our top tips for creating a supportive working environment for carers would be creating a carers policy if you don't already have one, flexible policies, training line managers. I think that is really, really key on the policy, what the policy contains, the processes, and what they need to do as a line manager to support their employees. And, you know, reviewing your processes on paid leave, you know, the carers who take unpaid leave or annual leave, particularly for their caring, you know, emergencies. Carers have little time for themselves as it is, so their annual leave should be their rest period. For them to ensure that they can recharge and remain engaged and focused at work, not for taking time off for their caring responsibilities. So that's really important. If you haven't already got one, set up a carers network or support group. You know, talking to other carers really, really helps support well-being. And the feedback that a network can give to the business is really invaluable. All of our staff networks in the CPS, you know, they're our ears on the ground, and often we in HR might be thinking, well, we've got this fantastic policy, everything must be okay, only to find out actually they're not being implemented in the correct way, or people are misinterpreting perhaps what they're saying. So you really need to have that feedback from your network chairs into the business to let everyone know what's really going on. The CPS Carers Network has found that during lockdown, we've actually been able to reach many more people than we did before. We've got teams, so we can have get-togethers, and people can ask questions or advice. And sometimes members just want to vent about their personal situation. Occasionally we have a cry, and, you know, we all get a virtual hug from fellow members. And, you know, we've been able to organise various webinars from Dementia UK, Carers UK. We can record them, so if our carers can't come, you know, we've got, obviously some of our carers are at court, so they're doing court hours, which they can't swap around. So for us, lockdown and Teams has really been really quite a godsend, to be honest, for us as carers, because we've been able to support and reach out to so many more people than we ever did before. So future plans, where we've got 5 days paid leave at the moment, so we're hoping to extend that to 10. We need to raise the awareness of the role of working carers. I think it's still something that really needs to be highlighted at every single opportunity possible. Encourage the use of carers passports. You know, we've got our workplace adjustment passport really embedded in our organisation, but carers passports still need a little bit more work. And of course, growing the CPS carers network. As Patrick said, you know, we've got 8 other staff networks in the CPS, and when we all work together, we've got that sort of collective voice, which is really, really important as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed, Linda. Really interesting presentations from our 3 extraordinary panelists. Just absolutely amazing. Really interesting for me to hear about the intersection of networks. And particularly the way in which people, of course, you can't define yourself, well, we shouldn't define ourselves just as one particular thing. We all have these interconnecting bits about who we are. But again, with Linda, a focus on line managers, and they do have a big responsibility. You know, it is something they really do need support and training for, to be aware of what's going on with their teams. And I was absolutely fascinated to hear that in Punjabi, there's no word for the term carer. And I wonder whether that's to do with the fact that the assumption is that, of course, you will care. It is just part of being a member of a community. So thank you so much, the 3 of you. We've got some extraordinary questions. We've got questions in the Q&A and questions in the chat. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to occasionally be going from one to the other so that I don't miss any, but I'm going to start off with the Q&A questions. So we've got a question in from Sarah or Sarah. She'd love to ask if the guests have separate employee networks for parents, and do they see any pros and cons to having parents and carers together or separate? And of course, this is one of the things that came up. Joanna, can I start with you?
Yeah, we absolutely do. We've got a working families network and a working carers network. And looking at some of the comments, we've also got an enable, so network. And we've been really strong at over the last year is that collaboration piece. So I work really closely with the co-chairs of the other networks, and wherever possible, we come together. And yes, we absolutely consider parent carers. And there is a really fine line between the 2 networks, and we work closely together in both.
Thank you. Patrick, what's your experience?
Yes, very similar. So we have a number of networks, including a working parents network, and we work very closely with the other networks. We have very regular catch-ups with the other networks to try and align with activities to make sure that our comms make sense in a sort of a broader sense. And we work, you know, closely on a number of events throughout the year, things like National Inclusion Week. The networks came together to do a variety of activities. So yeah, we work really closely because there's a lot of overlap, as you said, with our carers network and the other networks that we have. Thank you.
Linda, how about you?
Hi, yeah, so we've got a working families network, and then we've got the carers network, but we've also got a subgroup of the carers network who are for parents of children with disabilities. So we've got a subgroup on our carers network for those. I think one of the interesting things we did find in the feedback when we first had the pandemic was that line managers were much more open to adjustments being made for those working parents with children at home, but not quite so quick or open to adjustments for people who were carers. So that was quite interesting at the beginning. So I think that was something that we were really quite aware of, that 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 support maybe wasn't quite as widely available as it was for parents when the school shut down. So yeah,
it's really interesting, Linda, and it brings me to a question that has been posed by Karen, who says, how do organizations manage the perception that carers are getting more flexibility and more support in terms of particularly additional leave, paid leave that they may get, and the impact on their colleagues of having to pick up work at short notice? And I guess this is a question actually that's aimed not just at carers, but perhaps also if you can reflect on the parents. And that, I mean, it's very interesting that you had that differential for you, Linda. Again, I'm going to go around in exactly the same order. Joanna, if you could talk a little about that, please.
So it is a really difficult one. There's no two ways about it. There's people that are not parents and not carers that feel like they're there holding the organisation up at times. Our organisation was really good at thanking them for that, so we absolutely acknowledge that, especially through the pandemic. But actually,
I think Joanna's frozen. So what I'm going to do is we'll come back to Joanna when she comes back to us. And Patrick, can I come to you?
Yeah, so I mean, it is a bit of a tricky question, but within Centrica, we don't just have carers leave. Obviously, there's other sorts of leave that people can take, and it's a balance, and it's just making sure that we do the right thing and that we make that visible to people so that they understand that, you know, sometimes everybody goes through challenges in their personal life, and so it's not just about caring, you know, children or other things that happen throughout people's lives. And as long as we build a supportive and environment within our organisation, I think people do understand that, you know, if we can support people, the last thing we want to do is to lose colleagues that have a lot of skills and experience because they just can't make that work-life balance work. So anything we can do to make that work, we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Linda.
Yeah, I think that's you know, a really good point that Patrick's just made. I think for us, being able to support carers and parents when you need time off, I think we've done it in such a way that we're, hopefully anyway, so if a carer or parent needs 2 hours off work, you can go off and do whatever it is you need to do, and then they've just been logging off at a different time. So the work is still being done, but perhaps it's being done at a different time than they might normally have done it. And I think, you know, for us, I think it's that long-term sort of end goal, because if you support somebody when they need it, their kind of work ethic is such as they remember that, and then, you know, 5 months down the line you might need somebody who needs to sort of work on a project or do something, and you're thinking, well, they supported me when I needed it, you know, you're going to be more than willing to support them. So it's that kind of mutual support, and it pays back, because what we don't want to happen is that somebody then takes a day off sick because they've asked for time off because they need to take, say, mum to the hospital, and they've said, can I have the afternoon off? Their line manager said, well, no, it's a bit too short notice, whatever. And, you know, when it's a choice between taking your loved one for an appointment or coming into work, you're going to choose your loved one, and then you ring in sick. So that then puts a burden on the rest of the team. So it's those conversations to kind of put things in place so that doesn't happen, rather than the other way round. But yeah.
And thanks, Linda. And one of the things that I always think is really interesting is actually working carers and working parents frequently get quite a lot done in a really short period of time, because there's a focus on, actually, I don't have another hour. I have to get this done now. So we all bring our strengths and we all bring our challenges. So the next question I got in is from Tanya. Tanya says, carers who are not in work often find it difficult to find employment that fits around their caring role. Is there any good practice you can share about making the recruitment process more accessible to carers? And do you, within your organisations, promote support offered to carers to potential applicants? Patrick, can I come to you first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, within the Centrica recruitment process, we try and be as upfront and make all of our networks visible to potential employees. We try and have an open conversation during the interview process to try and uncover how we could best support people that are coming into the organisation, and we certainly let people know that support is available to them. But I think it's quite tricky because some people don't want to sort of divulge a lot of their personal information at that stage of the process. So it's quite difficult to sort of uncover that, but we do make a conscious effort to make the interview process as transparent and as fair as possible for everybody that takes part.
Thank you. Linda?
Sorry, I was expecting you to go to Joanna.
Joanna, you're back. That's fantastic. Thank you, Linda, for that great reminder. Joanna, if I could come to you, that'd be brilliant.
Apologies about vanishing there. I had a little bit of a dodgy internet, I think. So within Nationwide, actually, if you visit our co.uk sort of careers page, we actually have some stories on there from different walks of life, and one of them is a carer story. I have to be honest, I haven't checked, it's not been updated, but it's about a gentleman called Ben and his how he cares, how Nationwide supports him. So we like to think that we are quite welcoming to people that have caring responsibilities. Actually, through our interview process, we will talk to people about obviously making any adjustments they need, and that will include to, if you need an early interview or a late interview, we will absolutely accommodate that. But it does actually require that person to tell us that they have caring responsibilities. So we can only meet them, we welcome them, but I genuinely get that some people are very nervous about admitting that because they think it might go against them. I'd like to think within my organisation it doesn't. It's actually something that we feel adds to their skill set. And as you were just touching on, they tend to be very, very productive people.
Thanks. Linda, I'm now going to come to you. Thanks, Joanna.
Yeah, as you know, Joanna and Patrick has just said, we encourage our interview stage and information on our intranet. If someone has a disability or they've got caring responsibilities, whatever the circumstance of the particular person, we've got things in place to support. But we do find that even now, people will join our organisation and then on day one will say, I didn't want to say anything before until I got the job, but I have this medical condition, disability, and I need X, Y, and Z to enable me to do the job. And whilst we do it, that's great. What would have been even better for us as an organisation is had you told us that before you joined, because then on day one your equipment and your adjustment would already be in place. But I do really get that someone who is applying for a job who has caring responsibilities or a disability will think this is going to go against me, but at the end of the day, if you pass that interview, that is all that matters, is the skills that you're bringing to us as an organisation. That is the most important thing. And if you've got those skills, we will welcome you with open arms.
Thank you, Linda.
I can see that it's a difficult decision. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things that has popped up in the chat is the use of carers' passports. And it seems that there are differing opinions amongst the people talking in our chat. The idea that there's, again, and I think this is possibly all about perception, hopefully I'm characterizing this correctly, there's a concern from carers that by self-identifying as a carer, that will have an impact on their careers. And there's also, somebody was saying something about there being a stigma or an issue around the person to whom you are providing the care, not want to be seen as somebody who requires or needs care. So I thought that was really interesting, and I wondered if we could finish off our conversation just by briefly touching on that. Patrick, if I could come to you first.
Sure. So, I mean, we introduced the Carers Passport a number of years ago. When I first joined the Carers Network, it was just a pretty informal process where the head of the network just sent me a little Word form to fill in with my, just some of my details. To sort of register as a carer. It then evolved to a sort of a more of a SharePoint type form, but again, it wasn't stored anywhere centrally. But then we moved to having a more formal carer's passport within our HR system that's linked to the person, to the person's other HR information. But in terms of how intrusive it is, I guess, obviously people have a choice of whether they create a passport or not to start with. And then even within the system, I think there's just a tick box to say I am a carer, and then there's a big sort of text box that says please give us some information about your caring responsibilities. So people are able to then share as much or as little about their caring responsibilities as they feel that they want to. But it does help us to trigger that conversation, because the carer's passport is then flagged to their line manager, who then has a way to start that conversation with the person about their caring responsibilities, and hopefully about how best they can support that person and make any adjustments that are required. So so we hope that the passport is flexible enough that it's not seen as so intrusive into the carer's life. It's interesting about the person that you care for. I don't think I've come across that specifically during my time working with the Centrica Carers Network. I'm hoping that the person that provides the care also is pretty sensitive about the person that they care for and what information they share and how they deal sensitively with that. So I haven't really come across that as an issue, I don't think.
Thanks, Patrick. Joanna, what's it like at Nationwide around carers' passports?
So ours are completely voluntary, and they're not actually stored anywhere, so they're not linked to the person. It's they can use them as they see fit. So it's very much being word of mouth. And like Patrick, we do have a HR system that we ask people to identify as a carer on, and then we can reach out and offer support. But the passport, as I say, they can fill in as much or as little, and it's almost been that best practice piece. So we've been selling stories, and again, Patrick talked about real life stories. They're really powerful to sort of say, I was embarrassed and I was awkward, I didn't know how to discuss it. I showed the passport to my line manager and it started a conversation, and they generally go really well. So we don't know how many people within our network, which you could say is a fault, we don't know how many actually use the passport. It's all very much, we go out and we're gauging it on the number of people. We believe there's about 70% of our registered network users use the passport, but we don't have evidence of that. And that's something that we've consciously done. We've said, no, it's to be there to be used if you want it, but we're not going to make you. So that was our approach.
Really interesting. It's great to have those two very different, divergent views, and it clearly works for both of you within your organisations and with your organisation's culture. Linda, what's it like at the CPS?
Yeah, well, as I've said, we have a carers network. Again, you don't have to fill it in if you don't want to, just like our workplace adjustment passport. I was really interested as well to hear that feedback about that sometimes the person that you're caring for doesn't want you to identify as their carer. But I think, if from a workplace perspective, for us to enable being supportive to enable you to keep your job, really, to, you know, if you're a carer and you need some support to enable you to keep in the workplace, then you don't need to go into a great deal of personal information. Just saying, well, I'm a carer and every Thursday I need to have, you know, 2 hours off to take my mum somewhere, or to do whatever it is that you need to do. You don't need to go into any more great detail about what condition that your loved one that you're caring for has. So I think you just need to be mindful of your own personal circumstances and think, would my mum or dad or whoever want me to be talking about this to everybody, or would they actually prefer it to be kept a bit more private? So I think everybody's different, but it's not something that we've come across with, and I certainly think having a carer's passport really outweighs the kind of negativity, perhaps, or the, you know, that sort of, you know, embarrassment almost of having to put it down to have that conversation.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for that. As somebody who definitely overshares, I'm hearing that perhaps not everybody wants to know. We're coming to the end. In fact, we are at the end of this webinar. I found it absolutely fascinating. My instructions are that I'm supposed to go to everybody for final thoughts. And I'm going to be very mean and ask you all for one word. What is the thing that your organisation does that you are most proud of? Is there one word or a phrase that you would like to use? I can see Linda's thinking. I'm going to be mean and I'm going to go to Joanna.
I think my one word would be empathy. So we're an empathetic organisation and it's part of our values. I know that's more than one word, so I'll be quiet now.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Joanna. That's lovely. Patrick, how about you?
I think I'd use the word inclusive. I think at Centrica, everybody is embraced for who they are, and everybody brings something unique to the organisation.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Linda, finally.
Well, Patrick stole my word. So I'm going to say supportive. Because without supporting our carers and our parents, we wouldn't have the workforce that we've got now.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much, all of you. So a big, warm thank you to everyone who's come along today to join our webinar. I hope you've been inspired. I certainly have been. Invigorated. I certainly have been by some of the ideas that you've heard today. Please make sure you sign up for our newsletter on our website to stay in touch with our work and future webinars. And if you aren't already an organisational member, then do consider it. We can obviously help you to get to the point that Centrica and Nationwide are, and CPS too. Our teams have a huge wealth of knowledge and experience, and we can tailor it to you. Huge thank you to our panellists, to Joanna, to Patrick, and to Linda. Thank you so much for being so open, so engaged, sharing your experiences with us today. I mean, the chat has been so full, and we've had some great questions in. Please enjoy the rest of the National Work Life Week. Do use it to reflect on the difficult 18 months. And also, I was reminded that Monday was World Mental Health Day. And to tie everything together, if I possibly can, just to say a huge thank you to everybody. And flexibility, empathy, inclusion, and support are the name of the game. Thank you all very much indeed.